Hello, welcome to Deliver More, presented by the team here at Intech Services. I'm Nick. It's my pleasure to welcome Chris Lord and Mike Patterson today. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing? Chris, loosen up, man. You look tight down there. This isn't your first episode. Come on.
No. Yeah, he's an old pro by now. He's an old pro.
You know what? He's been off for a couple months, so he came back tight.
Do you think he's taking offers from other shows, Mike?
He might.
I'm suspecting it. He's got his free agency card out there. And that makes me think we're really grateful that you joined us again here on Deliver More. We're having a lot of fun working on these and bringing in so many members of the team and incorporating them and introducing them to our audience. And we're just grateful that you're with us. And this year in 2021 so far, guys, if you think back to what we've done on here, we've gone and taken a deep dive into the art of sales with the great Mr. Tony Abato. That was a blast.
Yes. Yeah.
We made marketing a focus for a 2-episode arc where we learned a great deal in the ins and outs. We even had that blast back in March where we did the March Madness with the coding.
Yeah, that was great.
Everybody in. So today we decided we were going to get a little bit more technical and take an exclusive look, take our listeners into this, and show how the team here at Intech actually developed a market for gun coating. So, gentlemen, if you could, it's summer. It's the season of the tank top. So Deliver More has your ticket to the gun show. Flex him up there, Wolf. Flex him up. He looks like a young Paul Orndorff.
I was saying yesterday that the fat's taking over the muscle now. It's like it's all gone.
Well, look, let me, if we could, and I'm going to start with you, Mike. Again, because of my kind of, I'm learning about a lot of this. Could you give us an overview of what Intech's approach has been to market development? Is this something that you guys have always done?
That's a good way to kick this off, Nick. It's market development, something that we have always done in some degree or another. And I think what I mean by that is, we start off as Intech as a distributor. That's our first responsibility, but we're also responsibility for growth overall of this general industrial segment, which is one of the things we take a lot of pride in. And so, we can always look to take more of the pie and increase market share, but ultimately long-term, the way for us to create our own destiny and to have sustainable growth is to work on market development. So it is something we do. We have, I think virtually everybody now in the sales team is involved in that. And what I mean by that is when people start new, like let's just take Steve and Patrick, they're the relative new ones. They're a couple years in, right? I mean, it doesn't do any good to put them on market development because they don't know the products yet. They don't know the dynamics. They don't know customer and how important application of the coatings is to performance of the coating, in the end use environment. So, getting them up the learning curve on the products, the markets, technology, the application, that's the base foundational knowledge that we instill in the new people. And then we start rolling them into market development stuff. So right now, all of us have some portion of our day devoted towards identifying markets and then working on developing the market. So yeah, it's something we spend time doing, and really it comes in 2 forms. Identifying and developing opportunities in existing markets. So an example of this would be automotive, and this is something that I know Chris works a lot in because automotive's been around since the Model T, right? But the needs and the demands on the parts change from model year to model year in a lot of situations, especially now. I feel like with the advent of electric cars and lightweighting and things like that, the need for coated components is even greater than before. So, that's an example where we're keeping an eye on what's happening in the automotive segment for change there and how we can adapt and be positioned to grow with that. But we're also looking into new markets where coatings aren't currently used. And so this would be new applications and new markets. So an example here would be 3D printing, which is something that's relatively new, within the last few years. And we see that market's going to grow. So for us, the challenge is there a need for the value that Teflon can provide?
All right. Well, I want to take and say, as it relates to the gun industry in particular, how did that market start? I don't know. Were guns always coated with Teflon? Is that an existing market, or is it something that you found needed development in your eyes?
I mean, everybody has their own flavor. There's different coatings out there, and back in the day, when I first started, guns were being coated, at least certain components, with actually a different coating than what we use today. It used to be 954 203 because it was a low cure and easy for a lot of these guys to handle. And as Teflon's a specialty product. Not everybody can do Teflon, but this kind of brought some of those players into the fold. And back in 2011, 2012, when the product changed a little bit because of an EPA mandate, we moved to the G codes. That 954 became one product because it used to be two products, and it had a little bit more gloss level, and a lot of the people didn't like it as a gun coating. And I mean, I would say we weren't necessarily chasing that market, but we were getting calls and people were saying, do you have something that has a matte finish? And we had a natural fit with 958 G303. So we started with that, and it has a matte finish, it has a flexible cure. So like these coaters come back into the fold again, start looking at this coating, and then we brought on 958 G313, which is a premium coating, extra durability, and introduce that. And one of the things that coaters will tell you, Mike's done this, Chris, myself, the guy, the newer guys are starting to experience this. Coaters want the coating in their hand. They got to see it. They want to see, what all the hoopla is about. And what's really funny is we didn't. We brought 958 G313 on for the automotive sector. Like we were going after that business with that coating, and then we started pushing, the coating out to people that were using 303, saying, "Hey, maybe you need a little bit extra," and brought 313 on, and it exploded. We had no idea, but then again, part of Intech, we're not just a distributor. Our job is not just move coatings around, and we all got to eat. We all want to sell stuff, and we all want to, and we get this information from our customers. I mean, and that's the whole key component of this is talking to the customers, finding out what they need, and they educate you while you educate them about your coating. So, I mean, that's the process.
So also at the same time, so one thing we do a lot of, Nick, is we watch market reports. We get some data from Chemours. They do a lot of economic outlooks and forecasting, so we get data from them. We subscribe to third-party market reports, so we watch a lot of what's going on. So when we see that an industry is going up, like firearm industry was, both in terms of military and recreational use, and the sale of firearms has been increasing over the Trump administration and is still going hog wild. Sure. So that's when we see those demand signals going on. That's when we start looking at it and saying, is there a way for us to expand? Is there any of our coders who may be dabbling in this that we can talk to and get more information? But like Chris says, I mean, you have to have the antenna up, whether it's through reading or whether it's through listening to conversations with our customers or curious researchers that call in and hoping to learn about Teflon. And it's a matter of putting those pieces together and trying to see a big picture out there and where those pieces may fall together. Yeah. And so that's the fun part of it, honestly. This is like, to me, it's like detective work. You know what I mean? Like if we're handling just incoming phone call all day, you're a beat cop. But if you're doing market development, you're a detective, because you don't know what's out there and you don't know where it may take you. But if you're listening and you're paying attention and you're tracking these clues down, you can put together a story that hopefully will lead you somewhere.
Yeah, that's got to be interesting, because it's not like you can put any of that to rest, right? You're always communicating with people in your business, you're learning of that need, but you're also studying the markets, and then you take those two things together and you adapt. Making sense. Thank you. And communicating that quite effectively to a newbie like me. Now,
Nick, I have one other thing too. Like that firearms industry is really interesting for us, because you have the hobbyists, you have, police forces, and you have military. So you have all these different sectors. And honestly, people want the best. They want to be using the best, coating or the best firearm that's out there and available. And when we're talking to people and they've been using one specific coating for a long time, and we're like, hey, people are really jumping on, 958 G313 or, our other PTFE dry lube product, they want to know what the hoopla is about. They were like, I haven't done this coating. How do I get some, or, how's it handled? And we have to qualify people in, but I mean, it's just Teflon is not an inexpensive coating option.
Right.
But you're talking about an industry that wants the best stuff that's out there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris.
They don't want some cheap coating, and it's like, and then they get a bunch of bad feedback. It didn't last, didn't do this, and Teflon checks a lot of boxes, and so it's a premium product for
performance.
Industry.
They'll pay for performance here, and that's exactly what Chris is driving at there. It's like a lot of times we're in industries where they're trying to reduce costs and still maintain performance. In this case, they're willing to pay for performance because it makes a difference. If it's a sharpshooter, whether it's a recreational or military, a little bit of a fraction of an inch makes a difference. So if they can have more consistency and better. One of the studies we saw was about the reduced coefficient of friction and how much that means on the moving mechanism, like a triggering mechanism. And somebody did a study on how much better, and it's like fractions of a second, milliseconds, but that's important to people. So it's kind of fun to learn about these different nuances and how their value is perceived in the big picture.
Absolutely. That's fascinating. Now, if you're talking about, we just learned about, the backstory of a market that you're right, it continues to thrive and has been thriving for years now. How do you qualify and quantify that opportunity to determine if that's legitimate market development, Mike?
I love this question, because this is something I think that we've developed internally over the years of going through this market development process and trying to figure out the best way to streamline it so that we can reduce the amount of time it takes to develop a market, and also qualify markets out. If we have an application that we're chasing that's not a winner, we want to move on and get away from it, and because that's a waste of time. So I think there's really 5 things that we look for when we're trying to quantify and qualify a market. One is the performance requirements. We need to understand what those performance requirements are, and if there's a match for what Teflon may be able to provide to them. So that's first and foremost, and that's usually what we understand coming out of the horse's mouth is when somebody calls in, or we're at a show, we're at an end user, and they say, I need friction of this and corrosion resistance of that, or whatever it's going to be. In the case of firearms, the specs that they were looking for performance were relatively on par with everything that fits Teflon. In fact, we had some where our friction was better and our corrosion was right where they wanted it to be. So it was kind of an easy one for us, because typically it's not like that. We usually have to try to increase in certain areas to meet the incumbent coding or solution. So first is performance. Second is application. And in this case, where we had been kind of in a bind before, is we didn't have many coatings that performed well when cured at low temperatures. And in this world, low for a Teflon application is around 300 or 350. But in other worlds, like the firearm, 300 or 350 is like the norm, or a high temperature cure for them. So and sometimes we'll talk to people and they'll say this needs to be air dry, and in which case we're immediately out. We may be able to meet the performance, but then it has to be air dried. So, or it's a part that's so big that they can't take it out of production, in which case we can't apply our coating on site safely. So that's one where we would walk away from that application. So, performance, then application, then understanding the current solution, because that's going to help us understand a lot in terms of exactly what that material is providing in terms of performance, how it applies, what its cost is, what its durability is, what its product availability, logistics, how is it distributed, all that sorts of things matter, because that lets us understand where our offering fits and where we may have relative advantages or disadvantages. I think the fourth one then becomes, do we have a solution? Is this something that we have that's off the shelf? Is it something that's an easy tweak, like say color? In the world of gun coatings, we had our Kimura signature black Teflon coating locked down, but the green they wanted was different than our green. and desert tan is something that's used extensively in this world. So
Sure.
this was something we had to go back to the lab and understand, can this be made? And if so, can it be, can we create this in a reasonable amount of volume so that we can access this market? So, understanding how it compares with what we currently have is big, because, kind of, if we have to make something new, a brand new coating out of the chute, that's gonna really lengthen the amount of time. And I know we'll talk about that later, but if we have to get a new coating created, our chances of success from Intech standpoint go down, because it's just a lot more moving parts, and a lot of more rabbit holes to fall down into. So anyway, so that's that. And then the fifth one is just really, after we have all those things figured out, how we perform, how it applies, the current products, do we have something? Then we start looking into the other stuff, like what is this market size? Who are the competitors? Who are the decision makers? What's the future outlook? Because the last thing we want to do is spend 6 months, a year, 2 years developing a market, and then what we missed was that it was going to move overseas in 2 years. And so we do all this work and we get 4 months of sales, because we've had that. Chris, you had that one 2 years ago. Yep. That situation popped. So, we try to lock all this information down to really build out a value chain and understand exactly what we have in terms of performance and value that we can bring to the table, and where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are. And then once we have all that, that lets us understand, is this an attractive market? Is there enough market size out there relative to the work and all the little things that have to go into going from selling a gallon a year to selling, thousands of gallons a year? Because that's the goal. So it's certainly a long-term investment of time, resources, travel, all that kind of stuff is rolled into this. But this is, for us, it's critical to our long-term success in sustainable growth for the product line.
Certainly it's critical. But when you're going through those 5 points, Mike, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like, my God, your experience in this field overall is absolutely critical, and compiling information like you just told us is critical as well. So that would be my next question, Wolf. If I'm not experienced, if I'm not a seasoned player in a market like this one, how do I go from the zero that you see here to hero?
Right. And Mike touched on this a little bit earlier too, about, having, we have some nice tenured people here at Intech between Mike, Chris, and I, and
sure,
I said Steve and Patrick are come up to speed. And we've gone through those wars of talking to people and understanding applications, what people are looking for, and identifying whether we're a play or not, or whether this is just going to be, not say small potatoes, but it's not going to pan out for whatever reason. That's why, Mike was saying it's nice to have an experienced guy that's had a lot of those conversations.
I imagine.
So we go into this firearm group, for instance, there's a lot of trade shows, and we've walked many trade shows just to, you got to immerse yourself in this industry, and you got to kind of look around and try to understand, like, what are these people looking for? Like, how do you speak the language? I'm not a gun guy. I can tell you that right off the bat. But I've, because this is a segment that is really valuable to us and really enticing, I've got to start learning about firearms and learning about the pieces and what components are coded, what's not coded. Who are the competitors out there? Like, what are other guys using? And you've got to pick all that information up. And one way you do it is, like I said, you do trade shows, you have conversations with people, you find guys who, they know what they coat with, and they've been doing that for a long time. Maybe they're not happy. Maybe, something's happened and I'm bringing something new to the table and they want to know about it. And, and it's an information exchange. Like, I've got to come to the table with something. I can't say, like, you should do this black PTFE dry lube. Why? What's differentiating me, or what am I saying to this guy that's starting to pique his interest, or now he's starting to say, like, I never dealt with Intech services. What's your business like? And how do you guys operate? Because I'm not having the greatest experience with the guy that I'm using right now. So again, you've got to get on the phone. You've got to have conversations. This isn't like I can Google guys all day. Hey, your website looks great. guys can make nice websites. That doesn't mean they do a lot of coding. That doesn't mean that the stuff you're looking at is theirs either. So go ahead, Nick.
No, I mean, so I guess you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. I mean, probably an extreme disadvantage if you're just going to be tethered to your desk and solely focused on your laptop, Mike.
Yeah, there's no way you'll ever be successful developing a market trying to do it from your desk. I mean, and Chris talked about the trade shows. That's something we spend a lot of time doing for a number of reasons, but it helps you really see what's coming down the pike. Like, whether it's in a market that you're already in, like, we go to the pizza show. I mean, one, because Bucci likes to eat pizza, but
that's smacked even when he's not on.
Yeah, but it lets us see what the technology is or what the demands on that market will be moving forward in terms of just application and how they're going to process their food. And there's a snack show, there's a tortilla show, there's a firearm. We walk tons of shows to talk the talk and to learn, how to approach an industry. And also, the best part about trade shows, guys are bored as hell in their booth usually. So if you roll up with a couple of questions, and then your body of knowledge builds as you're moving your way around the show, and you can have some really insightful conversations with guys that are sitting around twiddling their thumbs because, they were like, oh, great, finally someone who's got, some good questions for me. And especially like what Chris touched upon is huge. You have to bring something to the table too. Like, how can you help them? How can you make their product better or their process better? And, one of the things Tony taught me long ago, it's easy to walk up and play like, hey, I'm new with this game. Help me understand, why wouldn't you use Teflon in this sort of thing? It looks like it has friction. Teflon can lower that friction. Like, why wouldn't you? Have you ever tried it? Like, you just throw out that kind of open ender, and it a lot of times it really works because you're humble enough to say, I'm not a know-it-all, right? And I think in the trade show world everybody's a know-it-all. So if you come up with disarm people with like a switcheroo of like, look, I don't know shit, but can you help me understand this? That to me is a really effective tool for that. But I want to touch on one thing, and Chris was hitting on this. You have to talk, you have to learn the language, but you have to find somebody who's feeling pain. Right. And so this is usually like the person this is going to come across bad, but it's like, you have to find a shill. You have to find a person who is like, man, I hate my current supplier. I don't like how this applies. It doesn't perform great, whatever it's going to be. Somebody who is feeling pain. And if you can, connect with that person and they understand that, you potentially could have a solution that solves their pain or eliminates their pain, then they're usually your best route to gather a lot of information and to move testing along and to get parts coded and all the types of things that you need to do to understand that litany of information that we have to understand. But you have to have like a champion, to do that. And somebody that's like invested in their business, but yet knows your product can help them be more successful. So that's always like, we're always searching for that guy or girl, whatever it's going to be, or them. Leave that one alone. But we're always looking for that, because that is what's going to if we had to do this all on our own, just from onesie-twosie conversation, this is going to take a year, 8 months, something like that. But if you can get a person who can lead you down the path and knowing that if it's successful, it's a win for them and a win for you, and you're doing it together, now that's down to 3 months, 6 months. You can knock a lot of time off. And you can also potentially disqualify a market altogether if all of a sudden you find that it's not going to work, and save yourself a lot of time. So, that's super important, is finding that the nicer term we'll say is the champion of your plight.
The advocate.
You don't have to soften. That's one of my favorite words. Today's Deliver More is brought to you by the word shill. Well, I'm thinking about how markets develop, and I guess a good question would be, what is a reasonable timetable to expect a market like this, or just to expect a market to develop?
Well, I mean, Nick, it all depends. That's why it's nice to have some experienced person, researching this and talking to people and getting an understanding as to, what's in play. What are they currently using? and and what do I have? And of course, we always look right to what we have on the shelf first. And that's because it's tough getting into an R&D situation and trying to have something new, new chemistry or what have you, unless the opportunity is big enough where we're like, holy shit, we gotta go this route, because it is thousands and thousands of kgs or gallons of material. But we can be pretty quick to market if it's and they're not no specifications that have to be overwritten. It's an open spec, and we have a product. I mean, it could be a couple months, and somebody could move over, to our coating. That doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, I got that on one hand.
That doesn't happen all the time, but again, it's got to be put in the marketplace. You have to, there's an end user usually you're dealing with who has to approve, or there has to be testing done. And Mike and I were just talking about corrosion tests the other day, and like our blue coating, 1,000 hours of salt spray resistance is what it's rated for, without any type of pre-treatment, things like that. You realize how much time that is? That's months. You're just waiting for a test for corrosion. So, things like that, it can be time consuming. I mean, It's just like a sales rep starting 6 to 9 months before they do anything. It could be 6 to 9 months before you really start realizing some volume and people are starting to buy your product. We just introduced a new acid primer alternative. And we have people looking at it right now. And we started this, Mike, back in like November, December of last year. We are now just getting to the point where people are like, I'm going to start using that product.
15 months later.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So, and this is a product that's been out there for several years in Europe, and then we're bringing it over here now, and it's just starting to get some play. If you're looking for a quick hit, probably not the place for you. So
I think in general terms, though, I think if it's an existing technology, and I think the biggest caveat here is what Chris said, the testing and whether you have to change a specification at an end user. Those two things in and of themselves can extend anything.
Yeah.
But I think for existing product, I would say it's probably 12 to 24 months for a new market development. 1 to 2 years probably. And I think if we have to develop a new product, I think you're looking at 3 to 4 years. Again, it depends. I mean, we'll use that salt spray one. I mean, there was times I think it was the panels run in a salt spray chamber. I think they were running for like 4 months or something like that, right, Chris? It was something like that. And so we have monthly R&D meetings over at the lab. I remember, we'd be sitting in there, and there's always reporting on the tests, and all of a sudden the guy was like, it failed the test. And we're like 3 months into it. So now it's like, okay, well, that 3 months is wasted. Right. We have to do a product tweak, understand why it failed, tweak the product. Now that's going to take a month, 2 months. Now put it back in test to start another 4 months. So if you think about that, 3 months of testing, well, for whatever it took them to make the first prototype of the product, test it for 3 months, fails, fix it, test it again. Now you're a year into it right there. You know what I mean? So that sort of thing like that is killer. But if it's just like a simple friction test, they'll make a coating, test it, bam, pass, done, move on. Like, so some of them are fast. And that's why there's like a big asterisk on that one, as far as like, how long why there's such a wide range, and also like, what's the end users, how much pain are they in? They're dying to get their current solution replaced. They're going to whip you through that specification process and qualification process pretty quick. But if they're happy with what they're doing and you've got like a slightly better mousetrap, forget about it. I mean, they may not ever move you over.
Right.
Well, if can you let's go to you, Wolf. Is there an example of when this just simply doesn't work out, and at the end of the day, there's no payout?
Yeah, I mean, Mike touched on it a little bit earlier about the 3D market. The 3D market, we actually did invest quite a bit of time researching it and trying to understand, end uses where Teflon could be a play. And we did find a few areas where Teflon would be an advantage for guys in the 3D industry. But as we were going down this path of like the nozzles on a 3D printer, we're thinking like, well, they got to get gummed up, they would need something that is, non-stick, has great release properties, easy to clean, things like that. And came to find out that like they're really cheap. They've, changed them really quickly, put new ones in, and they just deal with that because it's not a big expense for them.
Okay.
And when you talk about having to coat that, and things like that, you're adding to the expense. And then we also found out that they're running at pretty high heat as well, sometimes above what Teflon is rated to. So, we started looking at it, and then you had the whole overseas component where a lot of the work may not be getting done over here. So here I'm running around trying to build a market in North America. I'm not going to sell a gallon of coating for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, with those nozzles, it was like we were selling thimbles of coating. You know what I mean? It was just
that little.
It was just a very little bit that was needed on the parts. So it's, it gets to be where the volume of parts times the amount of coating per part, that calculation just doesn't look very good in terms of, like, we sent a salesperson out to one trade show, and there's the ROI for the whole year's shot. Yeah, so we have to watch that stuff, but it's worth the investment of time to understand the market, understand the needs, understand, do we have a solution, and all those things. And now we know that that's not a great play for us, and that's fine. We'll move on if we get that question, because what tends to happen is opportunities get regurgitated, markets get regurgitated. So about a year from now, someone somewhere will say, hey, have you guys ever looked into 3D? And we're like, yep, this is what we found out. We can dust the report off and move on. I've been in, I don't know how many meetings, Nick, and Chris has been in some, where it's like a brainstorm meeting. Like, hey, what are some markets that Teflon is not involved in today that it can be involved in? And there's certain ones that come up every time. Like, and I'll tell one, boat hulls. Like the hull of boats, shipping containers, big vessels, cruise ships, like, not even talking about like personal watercraft, just the big dogs that are out there. Okay. They're typically metal, steel hulls, so they could handle a cure cycle. But show me how you're going to cure that thing. But like if you had a way of like having an air dry coating, like you could cure that. Or if you had a UV cured, where you could run a UV lamp over it, you could do it. And imagine all that surface area, and it's tangible result. Like you're lowering the friction of the vessel through the water, so the amount of fuel savings is easy to calculate. And the ROI for the shipping company is there. So there's applications like that have been around, as long as there's been coding, right? But and they regurgitate, and so in a couple of years, somebody's gonna be like, I've got a new idea, or somebody will call in here and be like, have you guys ever coated a boat hull? And we're like, yeah. So we've got a bunch of those. I mean, I'm sure, everybody does. Coders alike. I mean, they get as many questions, if not more than us, of people in their areas that want to coat certain things. Yeah. So, they come around, but so the secret is understanding what we have. But at the same time, I'm going to say this. There's ones that I worked on when I was a young guy. And I was like, this is a dog. It's not going to really pay off. And I've seen the younger guys come up. And Chris, you've done it. I mean, virtually everybody. Dole did it. Now even they're like, hey, I just heard we should go after this market. And I'm like, I could just stifle it and say, nope, don't waste your time on it. But at the same time, markets change and the demands and the needs change. So it's kind of nice to be able to say, okay, well, here's what we found out. This is 10 years old, but here's some base knowledge. Now go refresh this and let's see if we have a play. So that happens quite a bit, actually. It really does. Like gun coatings was, like Chris said, I didn't really think gun coatings was that big of a deal. We've been selling gun coatings forever, but not at this clip. The market's drastically changed. So this is a great example of the young guys saying like, oh, we've got something here.
That's cool. That's cool. So I always like to do this, and to play on your point, Mike, let's bring it back to part of our audience here. So if I'm a coder, I think there's an opportunity in an existing or a new market. What should I do?
You should contact us for sure.
Immediately.
Well,
Okay, we'll see you next time.
Don't call any other material suppliers, just us.
Intech Services, ladies and gentlemen.
But we've all done this. We have coders contact us all the time, say, "Hey, I want to bounce this off of you." Yep. Because one of the things they know, we talk to a lot of people. We're the exclusive distributor in the U.S. and Canada, so they're naive to think that they're just the one customer that we deal with all the time. We're talking to a lot of people, so they will ask specific questions like, have you seen this? What are is this a Teflon play, or do you think you have an option here? Because again, we're talking to OEMs, we're talking to job shops. You have different industries all over the country. that, you have the medical group in Boston, you got the, textile group down in the Southeast, you have some automotive down there, there's a food group out in LA, things like that. So, if they stumble across something, for sure, contact Intech Services and just, have as much information as possible, pick our brains, we'll fire some questions back. That's really the best option. You can go to our website too, because we have specific industries out there of markets where you can also, grab some information. But there's nothing better than a phone conversation.
Ultimately, our job is to help people utilize more coatings, and so if we can help people do that, then our hope is that our materials will be along for the ride on that win. So, we loved, these are great conversations to have. And so these are the ones that I would much rather have this sort of dialogue and help somebody understand a potential opportunity in their area that might be, beyond the scope of what they can do or right within the scope of what they can do, and really walk through that process with them and hopefully, help people succeed and build their business and have it be a win for everybody. But like Chris said, definitely give us a call. These are right in our wheelhouse.
And I have to think that most coders, from what I know, don't have, you got it right here, the resources. You don't have a Wolfie or a Steve or a Patrick to pull from and have that kind of staff power and bandwidth. So that's another a great thing.
Yep, I think a lot of our customers, they've got decades of experience, and they've been doing this day in, day out for, some are second, third generation. So they have a tremendous amount of base knowledge, but I think we can certainly be an additive asset to that and fill in some gaps where they may not be as experienced in certain markets where maybe we are. So it's a good combination, and it's fun for us because we love to learn, and so we love to pick their brains about what have you tried in the past on this, or what else do you see, and really because it helps us broaden our knowledge too. So this is really it truly is a team effort. When we work with our customers to help bring a success to the market.
I think one of the things that's important for everybody to know is Intech, our tagline, or not tagline, but we're the exclusive distributor of Chemours Industrial Teflon Coatings. We're more than a distributor. We're the front end to the sales process for Chemours, for the Teflon products. We have the connection with all the customers, that we sell to, who are even closer to the sales process than we are at times. So, and our accessibility, it's a heck of a lot easier to get a hold of me or Steve or Mike or Chris or Patrick at Intech than it is, a bigger company that we rep. It's just the nature of things. Big companies can be hard to get in touch with. We're the quickest avenue to, figure out whether you've got something or maybe you don't.
I had a problem with my Amazon delivery, and I called Jeff Bezos, and he still has not called me back.
Oh, you know what? I'll have to text him. I'll have to text me. He's still pissed off about something. He blamed me for something with the it's a cool thing to kind of, bring us together at the end. That's a great notion of business, though. It's like together we generate more business. And Mike, were you impressed by the couple of fastballs that Wolfie just threw down the plate? How quickly did he get off? It was like the business card coming at you.
Yeah, that was off script. Like I thought he was plugging something. Like that was well done.
Shameless plug.
I think he's got Bucci's in there with cue cards. Gentlemen,
don't get stuck.
This has been, thank you for taking us to the gun show here in our first episode of the summer. Can I ask you quickly, is there something, Wolf, that you may not have had access to last summer that you're looking forward to doing summer of 2021?
Oh, gosh. The constant anxiety and thought of whether you have a mask on you or not.
Yeah.
To be able to just walk around freely, I miss that. And what now we've been so conditioned over the past year. Now you're like, do I take my mask off? I don't want to create some kind of problem here. I don't, so it's just the freedom. It's so valuable, and you take it for granted.
Yes, you do. That overarching sense of freedom. Mike, what about you? Something that you may not have been able to do last summer you're looking forward to?
I think a lot of this for me stems from just being able to breathe easy about going out and not worrying about whether I was going to pick something up, or, you know, I have college kids at home that were out working. Chris is in the same boat, and like you don't know what they're bringing around. So just that like ease of like stress to be like, I can do what I kind of want to do. And I almost feel like it's been more than a year. I mean, I feel like it's been like 10 years since I kind of lived normally. So I'm just looking forward to just having a relaxing summer and kind of returning to normal and doing some of the things, you know, and re-engaging with some of the bar stools that I missed out on last year.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I had a beer outside and I at a pub there in Wilmington where I'm from, and it just felt so damn good and liberating to not worry about things and to just listen to some good tunes. My thing that I just want to do, and I didn't realize how much I missed it, I need to hear the baseball bat just slam a ball, just that crack, and I want to hear the crowd respond to it. It's one of the most hypnotizing things, and I miss that so much.
There you go.
So much. Quick, Chris, you're rolling to the beach. What song are you playing as you take your first trip to the summer? What's the theme? What are you going with?
Oh, I definitely I got on this like Slightly Stoopid Revolution vibe. I listen to a lot of that music because it's kind of like it's got a little reggae beat to it. Sort of.
I like Slightly Stoopid.
I don't know. It's just it kind of mellows you out, and it sort of puts you in a little bit of a mood, from like party mood more than anything. That because that's what, you know, when you go to the beach, that's kind of what's on your mind as you're driving down. Is like you get there, you know, pour my first drink, crack a beer, and kind of just chill out. So
Beautiful. I love it. Mike, what's in the jukebox for you?
You know what's funny is I just started listening to a Pandora Slightly Stoopid station like last summer, and I never listened to it except for in the summers usually. Wow. So that's funny you said that. I didn't even know you knew who they were.
Oh yeah, man.
But yeah, I'm into same sort of thing. If I'm going to the beach, I'm listening to a lot of reggae, a lot of kind of just chill, you know, Buffett type. Not really Buffett. I'm not a huge Buffett fan, but that type of like kind of islandy
vibe.
Yeah,
like Chesney, Zach Brown, and all that stuff. Man.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, a stream of tunes. But, you know, having college kids, I don't really control the in-home stereo either. So it's likely to be Travis Scott or somebody else.
Da Baby. My sons and I go back and forth all the time because they're fast forwarding through my songs, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" But anyway.
Well, look, we hope you guys get everything you want this summer as far as that sense of relief and liberation, and that certainly translates to our wish for all our listeners too. So have a lovely kickoff to your summer, everybody. Mike, thank you so much. Chris, thank you so much.
Thanks, Nick.
Take care, everyone.
It's always a good time.
It was good to be with you. We'll see you on the next Deliver More from Delaware. Bye-bye now.
All right.
Thanks, see you, man.